Three, two, one. Hey friends, Janky here, and welcome back to another episode of Janky's Lab. Today we are checking out a sweet game called Drifting Lands, created and developed and published by Alchemi. Good name, I like it. This game is in the style of classic side-scrolling shooters and also just a little bit of action RPG. Let me tell you about it. Drifting Lands is a hybrid of classic horizontal shoot 'em up with a lot of strong gameplay elements coming straight from the action RPG genre. If you want an original Diablo-like game or you want a different kind of shoot 'em up, you're in the right place. Yes, exciting stuff. Let's check it out. But before we do, let me tell you about my experimental biases so you know what to expect from me going into this review. So, pulling out that sideboard, let me talk experimental bias. First of all, I got this code for free. Through Terminals.io, I contacted Alchemi Games. They were like, yo, you want a code? And I'm like, that's why I requested one. So I did get my review copy of this game for free. You guys should know that. Also, I played about 2 hours of the game, so I might not have seen everything the game has to offer, but I do think that I managed to see quite a bit of what the game is offering to its players, so I think I have enough information to give a pretty informative review. So, hope you guys like it. I certainly enjoyed it. Here we go with the review. Okay, let's get talking about Drifting Lands. There is a lot going on in this game. It is both simple and incredibly complicated. Hopefully, I'm able to give you guys some good information on it. Basically, this game is exactly what I told you guys about in its description. It's a hybrid between a side-scrolling shooter and an action RPG. I would say that it's more side-scrolling shooter than it is action RPG. It does have this story that goes along with it. I didn't cut in a lot of footage of the story. Basically, it's just kind of told in these backgrounds where things kind of happen, and then these characters that pop up and have a couple different faces and some dialogue. It is a cool story, but I think it's kind of, I don't want to say secondary to the game, but I mean, the game would play the same regardless of whether the story was there or not. The story just gives it a little bit more flavor. Anyway, as I was saying, it's a bit more side-scroller than it is action RPG, but it does have one element that really digs into that action RPG side of the game, which is the customization of the ship. But before we get around to that, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about just playing the game here in the levels. First of all, let's talk about these backgrounds because they are so cool. You get these awesome three-dimensional backgrounds going on. I will say it messed me up very early in the game because it kind of looks like some of those asteroids and rocks and stuff flying around in the background are actually part of the game. They are not. I'm going to save you the trouble in case you want to play this. You can get around those. They're fine. You can drive right past them. There's no asteroid fields actually part of the gameplay. Maybe it comes in later on, I don't know. I only made it through the grade 1 levels. But as far as the grade 1 levels go, it's just pretty background for the game, which I absolutely love. As for some of the other things going on, you'll see that the UI is pretty simple, although I do have to tell you guys, you definitely need to read the menus if you're going to play this game, because as you can see, none of that stuff is actually labeled as to what it is or what it means, which early on in this game was very confusing to me. So let me tell you guys about what's going on here. Up at the top, you have your score, which is basically the same thing as money in this game. So you're earning score by destroying points. It's popping up as credits. So the way this game works, which is very strange, is that the money that you end up getting at the end of the level is 10% of whatever your score was. The game kind of justifies it as 90% is like taxes for your ship or whatever. And then the 10% is the 10% you get to keep and spend on ship parts and abilities and things like that. But essentially, 10% of your score is the money that you earn at the end of the level. Right next to that, you'll see a tiny little bar. I kind of call that like the map of the level. So those little bars that pop up, basically they show the sections of the game as you fly through them. Each section of the game, well, I should say each level of the game is made of a certain number of sections that we'll tell you about whenever you go into that level. And then as you move through the sections, they switch out so you can see yourself making progress through the level, which I think is a nice addition to a side-scrolling game. If they have little exclamation points on them, which some of them do, that tells you that there's a boss upcoming. So you'll be able to know whenever you're about to face off against something really big, right? So another thing that you notice about the sections as you play more of the game is that a lot of them are actually very similar. It's just sort of that they mix and match as you run through the game. So you do see a lot of the same enemies or the same patterns over and over, which is actually kind of nice because then you can kind of learn the patterns and figure out the best way to deal with them and like what kind of guns and what kind of skills are best for certain patterns. But I would also say that you do get some variety. So as you move forward in the game, you do see different kinds of things going on. And here we go. Now it's time for me to talk a bit about the action RPG elements going on in this game. So this is basically the setup. This is called the hangar. This is where you can see all of your ship parts and all of your attributes and all your stats and all your skills and all that. So you have your ship sitting there, and as you come back from the different levels, you can look at your hold. So your hold has items and stuff that you picked up. You have thrusters, engines, armor pieces, all this stuff. All of these pieces have different stats that are attached to them. So much like in a game, say like Dark Souls, you have to decide what kind of ship you want to build, and based on the kind of ship that you want to build, you find parts that are built to those stats. So for me, I'm terrible at that kind of thing. I'm much more of a well-rounded sort of person. So my stats weren't really leaning toward anything in particular, but up in the top right there, you can see the stats, and there are some other menus too that you can cycle through that basically show you what kind of ship you're building, and so you can kind of gauge what parts you'll need and what stats you're looking for in your parts to sort of build it the way you want it. Another thing in the center there is the attributes. So the attributes are another thing that you have to spend money on to get. So I should say that you do spend money to get ship parts as well. You can go to the store, which we'll see in a little bit. But the attributes you also have to spend money on. And you need a certain level of attribute to equip certain items. So everything you see there in red over in the stash, that's stuff that I can't equip yet because I don't have the ability level I need to handle it. You have structure, you have navigation, and you have power. And all of those have their own effects, like health, shielding, armor, whatever. So the higher you have in a certain area, those come with certain benefits automatically, and then the ship's parts can kind of upgrade that as you go. The other thing you can see from the hangar is the skills. So I have a small little section here just to show you the different skills. You can use them in combat. If you're a controller player like me, basically the skills are assigned to the buttons off to the side, X, Y, A, and B. And there's different skills that you can use. So here we see the basic skills in the background. There are 5 different families of basic skills. As you move up through the grades, you unlock more of those abilities, which you can use in combat. You also have advanced skills in the middle, which I'll pan over to in a second. There are 3 of those, I think. And then you also have passive skills or automatic skills. And those just sort of happen automatically. They get triggered by things in combat. And there are 4 different kinds of those. So like I said, as you move up through the levels, as you move up through the grades, you unlock more abilities. For me, I used shield, I used heal, I used a lancing dash kind of thing, and a detonation ring. So I could explode enemies around me, which was very helpful. I don't remember what my passives were exactly. They were just kind of like helpful to my particular build of ship. There are 3 classes of ships. I picked the easiest one with the most armor pieces because I was going for easy. But you can kind of choose based on your skill level and what you're trying to design. So the nice thing about skills is they're sort of supplemental to your basic fire, and I use them a lot. They recharge very quickly in combat, so they're very useful. This is the store. It's just broken up into different ship parts, so you can get the ship parts you want, and you can also sell off your old ship parts. So if there are parts that you want to sell, you can do that. The other nice thing is you can actually switch to a section called blueprints, which I don't have a clip of here, but blueprints you can use to sacrifice an item from your stash and create a blueprint of it, which you can make so many copies of, and you can build them kind of to your specifications, or you can find blueprints just flying out in the world. And you can use those blueprints you find out in the world to construct new things. Okay, so getting back around to this, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to mention. I should probably talk a bit more about the ship classes. So the one that I'm using right here, as I said, it came very strong, and it came with a lot of armor slots. There's sort of an intermediate one that's, I think, more for just like, if you're an average normal gamer, that's the one that you'd want. It has 3 armor slots, and then there's one for people who are already kind of advanced in these kind of games that only has 2 armor slots, but it's also very fast. It has a lot of cool skills that come with it. The other thing I should mention too is that this game actually has 2 modes. It has normal and forgiving. In normal mode, you can lose ships, so if you lose a level and your ship explodes, that ship is gone forever. But in forgiving mode, you can save ships even if they explode. I was playing on normal mode because I was like, why not? You know? I chose the biggest, heaviest ship, so why not? This was my favorite gun in the game. This was the railgun. I thought it was so much more useful than the other kinds of basic fire. I loved it so much. So while we're here, let me finish talking about the bars across the bottom, since I didn't get a chance to really talk about those before. So you have 4 bars that you can see across the bottom. The white bar on the far left, that's your shield. So every time you take fire, it reduces your shield. Now the shield will regenerate on its own, but if you take enough fire, it starts to eat into that pink bar, which is your health, which does not regenerate over time unless you build that into your ship as one of your skills. So it's very important to keep that shield up so that it doesn't dig into your health, which is something that I had a lot of trouble with later. I never blew up my ship, but there were a couple times I was very low on health. Now, the blue bar that you see on the right side there, that's your energy, which is what you use to trigger your skills. So you need to have energy in order to use your skills. I never ran into any really big problem with running out of energy. It also recharges very quickly, so I never had that problem. The last bar I'll talk about here in just a minute. I just wanted to show you this. So this is sort of the map of all the missions you can see in the world. Basically, those little numbers, they just show you how many sections there are to each level. So if the section says there are 9, then you have 9 sections that you have to complete in order to complete the level. The last bar that I want to talk about there is the focus bar. So the focus bar is basically a score multiplier. It shows off, it basically multiplies your score, as the name would imply. But each ship has a certain condition. So the ship that I was using there, the condition to build up the multiplier is basically the shield has to be regenerating in order to build the focus, the multiplier. So I literally had to basically keep taking damage so my shield could keep regenerating so the focus could build, that multiplier could build. And all of the ships have some condition that's basically encouraging you to take some ridiculous risk in order to build that multiplier up. So focus is cool, but also sort of a dangerous thing. Ooh, I'm getting low on health here. So this was actually the boss fight for the grade 1 level, sort of like the finale of the grade 1. It's pretty typical of side-scroll shooters. I mean, it's just a boss that has a whole bunch of patterned fire, and you just have to know how to dodge around it and dodge through it and use your skills properly in order to save yourself from dying, which luckily I managed to do on the first try with this boss. Anyway, let's wrap things up, shall we? So let me bring out the experimental scale while I finish wrapping up talking about this game. So overall, I had a really great time playing it. It was a lot of fun, and I would definitely recommend this for fans of the side-scroll shooting genre. And if you're really into detailed customization, I think that you would probably like this game too, because there's definitely a lot of that when it comes to building your ship. As you guys remember, there are 5 possible rankings on Janky's experimental scale. There is smashing success, promising results, more trials needed, revisions required, and acid kid. I had a lot of fun with this game. I think it's a really good build. It's not necessarily my style of game, and it doesn't necessarily hold your attention for a very long time, but I think it's fun to pick up and play for a couple hours, so I would give this game a ranking of promising results. I hope you guys agree. If not, you can of course leave it in the comments down below. But more than anything, I hope you guys have a lovely day, and I will call this experiment concluded. So, I hope you guys enjoyed yet another episode of Janky's Lab. If you did, you can leave those likes down below. Comments, positive or negative, as I said, you can leave those below as well. But more than anything, I hope you have a lovely day, evening, or whenever you happen to be watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, this is Janky Shenanigans, signing out.